I started listening to stories of young people. I started connecting with people who had been through crazy things, but still seemed to have this bright smile on their faces, much worse than anything I'd been through. And I was able to collect up a bunch of experiences which helped me understand what resilience means. And during this process, I wrote a poem called Please Resist Me. And it's my version of the saying, what doesn't kill me only makes me stronger. Please resist me, colonize me, compromise me, conflict me. Please don't risk me. If you see me at the airport, please come frisk me. Please resist me, colonize me, compromise me, and conflict me. Please don't risk me. Please call me stupid, because your resistance brings my evolution. Please resist me. Lock me in solitary confinement. I'll close my eyes and admire the quality of the silence. I'll write rhymes in my mind, honestly, and define them, solidly redefine and memorize them until, like a diamond, when I come out, I'll be better than when I arrived in. Please resist me, because resistance brings evolution, and you've resisted me so consistently. I thank you for your contribution. I am a happy man. This stupidity has made me strong. I've developed wings, a thick skin, and this here opposable thumb. It holds my pen, which loads my explodable tongue. So without loading a gun, I'm killing high quarters of unemotional punks. Sorry. You also taught me to speak French. I learned it when you kept keeping me at arm's length. Then I learned Italian just to expand my head, and Greek to learn from where my ancestors had fled. And then I learned some Yanua just to show the people of this homeland some respect. You see, it's been your example that has led me to leave you for dead. So don't trust me. I'm risky, insurmountable, unaccountable. I'm an undeniable, unreliable, maniacal liability. I fire soliloquies, and my liturgies literally leave a literary litany. You see, when I was little, they told me I was illegitimate, illiterate, and limited. Little did they know that in a minute I'd be killing it. I'm vivid like in cinnamon, so my synonym is vividness. I stick it like I'm cinnamon and kill it like a militant. I live it like a citizen. You live life like imprisonment. Besides, indigenous immigrant might be the most legitimate of citizens, so it's better to live a life like us. Isn't it? That poem has become a bit of a symbol for what it is that I do and believe in. And anytime an obstacle came into my way, I would look at it straight in the eye and say, please resist me. I'm ready. It's only going to make me stronger. But what did I learn? I also learned that defending my position is not enough to develop a full form of resilience. But I also have to fill up what I was talking about before, this pool of resources with things like my own culture or language, different forms of healing or growth, my own mental health, different types of tenacity. So I returned to a little piece of Greece up in Upper Mount Gravatt, my grandmother's house, my yaya's house, to learn from my elders. And I quickly realized that I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the resilience of my ancestors. And that in fact, none of us would be here if resilience wasn't already embedded in our DNA from all the things that we've already been through. And for Greek people with Greek ancestry, this means surviving 400 years of Ottoman occupation. And during that occupation, many children being stolen by Ottoman troops and forced to join the Ottoman army and come back and fight against their own people. Attempts at genocide, 500,000 Greeks were killed alongside Armenians and Assyrians of even greater number, plus the Nazi invasion of Greece. And when it comes to my own grandmother, the Nazi troops came to the different villages where she was from. And in one of those villages, they lined up all the men in the village that were not Jews, that were just local Greeks, and that were all massacred. 500 men were killed that day. It's called the Massacre of Kalavrita. And the women and children were locked in a hall, and that hall was set on fire. And luckily, they escaped, but they escaped to find all of the men of the town passed away and the village on fire. And similarly, in my grandmother's own village where she was living, they also lined up the men in that village, and they were ready to also execute them. And on the way to that place where they were going to execute them, my grandmother's brother ran and decided to try and escape. And the Nazi troops shot him and killed him as he was trying to escape. And eventually they didn't kill everybody in the town. They didn't execute all of the men, and he was the only man that died. And my grandmother and him were very close. She has all the reasons in the world to be a hateful human being. And yet what she taught me the most is how funny she can be, and how comedy is actually a great form of resilience, an incredibly important form of resilience. And you can see in that photo before, she was the one riding that motorcycle with my mum in the sidecar, and she had that sense of resilience. This poem is for her. My grandmother grew up between two wars in Greece. She lost her brother, Christo, to the Germans and named my mother, Christina, after him. Rare for a Greek woman. She had a divorce at 50 and has lived for 30 years with his photos still in the spare room. She's a green thumb. She drinks cordial from her own mandarins, drinks tea from her own chamomile bush, and picks tomatoes whenever I say to her, yeah, I feel like a salata. She hardly went to school. But one day, when discussing all the time that I've spent studying at university and admiring all 3 different types of basil she has growing in her garden, she says to us, Luca, eat 2 leaves basil every day. Good for the blood, good for the brain. They don't teach you that at university. When my brother Elias says to her, yeah, you really know a lot. You're really smart. She always replies, yes, Elia, I'm very education. So one day I decided to ask my grandmother about racism and whether it's okay for Greeks to still hate the Turks for what they did to us in the past. And she says, racism? No. Just because some people naughty doesn't mean you throw the rest in the rubbish. Her name is Katarina Batunas, but her maiden name is Sarandavra. And Sarandavra literally means 40 eggs. And as the story goes, one of my great-grandfathers was bet by another villager to see if he can eat an omelet made entirely with 40 eggs without getting sick. And anyone who knows my appetite will know I'm very proud to say he won that bet. And so the nickname, Mr. 40 Eggs, Sarandavra, then got turned into the family name and was passed down the generations to my yaya. And today, it's her birthday. So I say what we always do. Naikatostisis yaya. May you live to 100. But she's 83, so instead of thanking me, she says, 100? God me, no thank you. Maybe a couple more years, then I go to sleep. Where are you going to go to sleep, yaya? In the cemetery. I already buy a little house there. I don't afraid. Until then, she keeps stopping us from doing the dishes every time she cooks us a meal. She'll keep calling me to see if I'm too cold when I'm visiting Melbourne. She'll keep trying to slip me a $50 note every time I visit. And she'll keep telling me, Luca, eat 2 leaves basil every day. Good for the blood, good for the brain. They don't teach you that at university. So my grandmother taught me so much about laughing at ourselves, about laughing at the world, about keeping the simple things important in our lives, keeping them at the center so that we can remember what it is that keeps us alive, really. What are the most important things in our lives? She would always ask, are you happy? Are you healthy? Health is number one. It was at this point where I discovered that I was diagnosed as what's called an undermethylator. For those who don't know what methylation is, it's a process where minerals and nutrients are converted into serotonin or dopamine. I wasn't really doing that well, if at all. And undermethylators are more susceptible to psychosis, stress, depression. Not producing serotonin or dopamine at all, obviously, can send you down a hole. I also found out that we produce more serotonin and dopamine in our stomachs than in our brains. And I started working more deeply with diet, juice cleansers, crazy 5-day water fasts, quitting all stimulants. I tried absolutely everything and I started to get somewhere. But I also realized that it wasn't just about putting our dreams on hold and trying to heal first. I found that quite the opposite was the most powerful. The most beautiful thing was that I realized that we can spiral upwards instead of spiraling downwards when we start to put different measures of success on our lives, our mental health, our relationships, our physical health, not just monetary, career-based things, but everything equally. And as each thing takes a step upwards, they all help each other keep rotating up the spiral towards something better, a life that we could call comfortable, or at least not in a perpetual anxiety attack. That's when I also started learning about my history, listening to stories and connecting with cousins upon cousins upon cousins of family in Greece. And I learned about a family member called Magdalini Haralampu, my great-grandmother, my grandfather's mother. She was born in 1883. Ironically, or perhaps perfectly, also the same year that Khalil Gibran was born, and the same year that Nikos Kazantzakis was born, and exactly 100 years before I was born. She was the midwife of the village of Monolithos in Rhodes. They had no running water, no electricity. They lived very, very difficult, tough lives. And there she is right there, Magdalini Haralampu. She lost her husband and her only son to the magnetism of immigration. They left her in the village to raise her 3 daughters by herself and migrated to Australia to find a better way of life, with the idea of returning or sending money home. Unfortunately, her husband, my great-grandfather, never returned to Australia. And my grandfather did, but only after many decades. This photo is of the village in its higher time when there were many more people living there. And the story is that I've been told when I was given this photograph last time I visited there, is that every single person in that photo was delivered by my great-grandmother, not just the children, but also the adults. And even now, when I return to the village and I meet someone that's, say, in their 70s or late 60s, they will also tell me that my great-grandmother delivered them. And so that is an indicator that she was delivering babies until she was about 80, 85 years old, and just before she passed away. And so her resilience lives on so deeply and so powerfully in the village that when people ask me who I am, I say to them that I'm the great-grandson of Mummy, which is literally, she's referenced as the mother or the matriarch of the village, and her reputation still shines on me. Imagine your reputation for resilience is so strong that your great-grandson still gets some secondhand shine when he turns up in the village and says your name.